Promises strong as a spell. I'll never tell.
Hi guys, welcome back to exmolex. The other day on Instagram, I asked my ex-Mormon followers to tell me the #1 thing that upsets them about the Mormon church. There's an awful lot of Mormon rhetoric that goes around online about how bitter and angry ex-Mormons are. So it might be a little bit silly, but I kind of wanted to showcase why that might be. I think this is probably the most responses I've ever gotten to a single question. And I think it can be therapeutic to talk about these things, to talk about why we feel what we're feeling, to talk about where these negative emotions come from. And maybe for somebody who is a member of the Mormon church and doesn't really understand why people can be so upset and have such strong feelings about it, maybe this will be good for them. Maybe this will give you an idea as to why sometimes ex-Mormons can be very bitter. I would say that my most angry and bitter phase after leaving the church was maybe 6 months after I left to maybe 2 to 3 years after that. I would like to think that for the past couple of years, I haven't been as much angry and bitter as I've been reflective and mindful and empathetic. But obviously when I think about it, there are definitely things that I still feel bitter about, things that I look back on and either go, wow, I'm glad I don't have to deal with that anymore, or wow, I'm having so much more fun, or I'm having such a better life because I do this instead. So let's take a look at what some of those answers were, and if you agree with any of these, or you can think of something that you're bitter about that nobody said, write it in the comments. And speaking of leaving comments, I could really use your guys' help with something. Because of the topics of some of the videos I've done recently, my views have been really suppressed, so here's a few ways you can help out with that. Leaving a like or a comment on the video is always really helpful. It kind of helps boost the video so it gets seen by more people. But another really important thing that can help me out a lot that I haven't really talked about before is watching the video all the way through from start to finish. Videos that are watched all the way through get more views and do a lot better in the YouTube algorithm. So maybe even if you don't want to watch this whole thing, just let it play in the background so it can maybe help boost the video a little bit. And of course, it would be great if you subscribe, if you check out the other ways in the description to help out the channel, any of those things. I would really, really appreciate it. Without further ado, let's talk about things about the Mormon church that upset ex-Mormons. Coming in hot at #1, the judgmental attitude. I definitely have a lot of experience with this because I used to be a Mormon that was judgmental. And growing up in the church and being a member of it for 25 years, I saw this sort of thing take place in church all the time. In church meetings, in Mormon family get-togethers, even at school, I would often see people judged if they, 1, weren't members of the church, or 2, were less active members of the church. Or even if they were active practicing members, if they did anything that was contrary to the teachings of the church. And even if they weren't being outright mean and saying mean things about somebody, they would often say things really nicely that were kind of like a backhanded compliment, or they would say oh yeah, so-and-so hasn't been to church in about 3 weeks. I mean, bless her heart, there must be something going on, which could be seen as trying to be nice, but when you really look at it, it comes across so demeaning. This person said the lack of honesty and detailed worthiness interviews that traumatized me, and hypocritical. Yeah, there's a few different things in there. The lack of honesty is a big one, and I think it's something that a lot of people talked about where, a lot of us had this sort of church education that followed this same sort of path, and then as we are either leaving the church or when we're getting ready to learn more about the church, we start learning things that the church lied to us about, or the church whitewashed parts of its history, and that is so frustrating. And I know worthiness interviews is a big one for a lot of people. I personally didn't deal with this too much as a young person in the church, but I do have a lot of trauma surrounding my childhood bishop. If you've been on the channel before, if you know my story, you probably have heard about him, the fact that he's in prison now. And honestly, the stuff that he did and the way that I've seen that ripple effect affect so many people in my life, and how badly it's hurt so many people. And that's not even to mention the victims of his crimes. You see this tsunami that hits the victims, right? And then those waves keep crashing and they hurt, the victims and the victims' families. And then there's more little waves that affect the people that were in the ward. And then there's ripples that affect the people in the stake. You know what I mean? It starts as this one really terrible thing and just crushes and maims so many people. Bad bishops are much more common than you would think. And this idea of the detailed worthiness interviews is one of the reasons that people have a lot of trauma surrounding bishops, because some of us go to have a worthiness interview and come out of it feeling traumatized because of some of the questions that the bishop felt it was okay to ask a literal child. How much it breaks its own rules about honesty and charity. Very true. I think you'll probably see that playing out in the media an awful lot recently. I will leave a link in the description if you want to know more about that whole debacle. It's been wild to hear about. Self-righteousness. Mormons act like they are more loving and intelligent than anyone. And you know why that is? It's because they're taught that they are. They're taught that they're God's chosen people and that they're so blessed to be a part of the only true religion on the face of the earth. I mean, it tends to make you have kind of a high and mighty attitude. I was straight up lied to basically every day for the first 20 years of my life. That can tend to make anybody feel bitter or upset or angry or hurt. I think that when I was going through my faith crisis, that was the number one thing that really just hurt, was the idea that I had trusted this organization with my entire existence, my entire life, my entire reality, and they'd been lying to me. It's hard to let go of that. It pushes intelligent people to defend the inexcusable and the illogical. Sometimes I feel pretty resentful about that as well. When you know, just looking at church history and looking at the person that Joseph Smith was and looking at all the records that we have from people that lived then and how people will defend bad things that prophets and apostles have done because they have to defend the church. They feel like they are called to defend the church, even when, like you said, some of these things are indefensible. We just don't understand everything yet, aka the Lord hasn't revealed everything yet. Yeah, that can be really frustrating as well, especially when you have questions, and if there's ever anything that they don't have an answer for, that's what they'll say, like, we don't have all the answers. The Lord hasn't revealed that to us yet. You will see that sometimes like in older church books. Like I've seen a lot of that from Bruce R. McConkie in particular. If there's like something that somebody asks or a question he lays out in one of his books, he'll be like, we don't know the answer to that. And in fact, in some of them I've noticed he'll say, we can't know the answer to that. And that really frustrates me because it's like such a convenient excuse, right? Good people idolizing a terrible man. I so agree with that. And I agree that they are, for the most part, for the grand majority, I believe, good people. And it's like somebody else said before, they will defend Joseph Smith and the bad things that he did, or the bad things, the horrible things that Brigham Young did, because they believe that they have to. Being constantly misunderstood / having people assume I have bad intentions. I hate that as well. And the thing that's really especially hard about it, as somebody who makes a lot of content about the church, is like, of course, 99% of Mormons who see my content, and that's not to say it's all of them, because sometimes there's really kind Mormons in my comments who are just here to try to understand, which I really appreciate, and I think we all do. But most of the time, Mormons watch my content and assume that I have bad intentions, that I'm just trying to lead people down to hell, and I'm trying to tear the church down because I'm an evil person possessed by Satan. And even if I, you know, make TikTok videos, make Instagram posts, make YouTube videos about my true intentions and how, you know, I'm doing this with all the best intentions, if they have a certain mindset, it doesn't matter what I say, they will be bound and determined not to believe me. And that's so frustrating and so hard. And yeah, like, I can definitely see how somebody would feel bitter about that. The sheer amount of money they have and still expect members to give and give. Yes, that's extremely frustrating, especially given the fact that prophets in the past had said that at some point tithing wouldn't be necessary. And I think that we've reached that point and then kept going and kept going and kept going and kept going. At this point, like, nobody should need to donate to the Mormon church because they have so much in their investments that they are making money without anybody donating. And it is frustrating that they still expect members, even beyond expecting them to, they tell them that you can't go to heaven if you don't. You won't make it to the temple if you don't. Even if you can't afford to feed your family, you still need to pay tithing. And that, yeah, beyond infuriating. How they pity me when I'm the happiest and healthiest I've ever been. Yeah. Isn't that interesting how that works? You know, for me, I look at some of the Mormons in my life, and like some of them, they're all, you know, practicing, whatever. Some of them are really enjoying it and they're doing great and they're healthy and happy. Others of them are suffering. They are having a hard and difficult life that's made harder because of the things that they have to do in church. And I truly believe that their lives would be easier if they let go of that. But I am still able to recognize that, like, yes, some people are happy in the church, absolutely. But most people in the church, when they look at outsiders, especially people who have left, they don't think that we can have true happiness. They look down on us, like you said, with pity. Yeah, very frustrating. I only left the church about a month ago. Wow, welcome to the fold. But I get so many judgy stares. I go sometimes and don't take the sacrament, obviously, and they look at you and wonder why, and sometimes they even ask why. Yikes. It is no one's business, but they can be so rude and make someone like us feel so unwelcomed. They preach how welcoming they are, and they are if you're a convert, but not an exmo. Yeah, I feel that. Converts are welcomed with open arms, and people are so excited about converts. And if you leave the church, all of a sudden you're a pariah. It was one of my biggest fears leaving the church, was like, I'm going to lose my community. I'm going to lose my friends. I'm going to lose my family. I was even scared I was going to lose my husband before I confided in him, like, what was going on. I mean, and it's with good reason, because if you're in this church for a long time, you know that leaving the church, people are going to look at you differently. No matter what they say, even if they say that they don't feel any differently, they do. And I've had people in my life confess this to me. Constantly changing their narrative, then gaslighting us about the past. Absolutely. It's really interesting to watch this play out in real time. Especially like on TikTok with a younger audience. I can say things and young people who are like in seminary right now are like, what are you talking about? Like, they will have no idea. And it's not like there's a giant gap in our generations. Like, I'm gonna be 30 this year, and if you talk to somebody who's 15, our perception of the church and the things we learned at church are so different, and they have no idea about the older stuff because the church doesn't, you know, obviously continue to publish older stuff. It's wild that even when you leave, the teachings haunt you. It's like you can never fully move past it. I definitely feel that in some ways, and I've made videos talking about how, you know, I've slowly been able to overcome some of the things, but, you know, there's certain days where some of it will haunt me more than others. I really recommend looking into mindfulness. If you have an Audible account, there's lots of free titles on there about mindfulness. Or if you have a Libby, go on the Libby app. All you have to do is get a library card and you can rent audiobooks or regular books for free on the app. And there's a lot of really good mindfulness titles out there, and some of them can be a little woo-woo, which is not really my thing, but I think it's important, you know, to look at all these outside perspectives and learn about how to find peace within yourself. And, you know, if you don't agree with all of it, like, take what's good for you and leave the rest. I think that having like mindfulness practices in your everyday life can really help you find peace with religious trauma. So it's something to look into if you're interested. That they expect understanding and respect for their beliefs, but won't do the same for you. Woof. Hit the nail on the head with that one. Not acknowledging the mind control the leaders use to manipulate them. Yeah, I think that would be really difficult for them to do, because in order for them to do that, to recognize that the church and the leaders use mind control techniques, they would have to be looking into it and learning how that works and seeing it play out in other religions or other cults, things like that. And once you see it, it's hard to unsee it. And they probably don't want to see it in the first place because it could, you know, make them have conflicting feelings. And of course they don't want that because they don't want to go to hell. It's the, we miss seeing you at church for me. Yeah, that, I imagine that'd be extremely frustrating, because it's like, I exist outside of the church building. You know where I live. You could come say hi if you really miss me. The only reason for leaving is to sin. Like, could there be any greater insult to my character? Yeah, I feel you. I feel the same way, because in my case, I did not leave the church because I wanted to do anything that was considered a sin. But you know what? Sometimes people do leave for those reasons, because they want to enjoy their life outside of these strict, arbitrary rules that the church has laid down for them. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that personally, but I do think it's really high and mighty and really rude of Mormons to assume that you left to sin, and to, you know, put that on you as though, like, look at you leaving to sin. Like, I mean, they are, even if it isn't necessarily an insult, because like I said, I think it's okay for people to leave because they want to enjoy their lives. Even if you aren't viewing it as an insult, it's still an insulting thing to say to somebody, because it makes it sound like you are acting as though you are better than them and they don't have as much willpower as you, or they have a better moral compass than you. It just comes across as, I am better than you, and that's why you left and not me. The unwillingness to understand exmos. It is really hard, isn't it? Like I said, I have over the past year or two tried to make more videos that I feel like Mormons can watch without feeling like it's going to shake their faith, to help them understand ex-Mormons better, because so many people are leaving the church that a lot of church members now have friends, siblings, parents, children, cousins who have left the church, and you know, either they're going to stop having a relationship with them, they're going to have a bad relationship with them, or they need to have more empathy and understanding for them. And so I hope that some of the videos that I've made might be helpful for a Mormon in that situation, or for an ex-Mormon who can watch it and be like, can you please watch this? This is how I feel, or this is what's going on. Oh, I feel like I've been recording for so long, but I'm not even halfway through all of these responses. So let me know if you enjoyed this video. I'm gonna end it right here, but maybe if enough people wanna see it, I could do a part 2. Let me know. But like I said, if there's something that is the most upsetting thing to you about the church that you didn't see in this video, leave it in the comments. And if you did see it in this video, leave it in the comments too, so more people can see and more people can relate. And also, just because commenting really helps me out with this YouTube algorithm that is trying to kill me lately. Thank you so much for being here and watching. Remember to watch till the end of the video. It really helps me out. Super big thank you to all of my patrons for supporting the channel. I appreciate you guys so much. Huge thank you to Craig Call, Doug Davis, Tans, and the Exmo Candle Co. for supporting at the Demon tier on my Patreon. Today's patron of the day is David Glenn at Glenn's Irish Setters. David is a patron on the Excommunicated tier and has been a patron for 18 months. Thank you so much for your support, David. If you would like to support the channel, I would appreciate that so much. There are links to do so in the description below. Patreon is probably the best way, but there are lots of different ways you can help support the channel, and I would appreciate any of them. Thank you guys so much for being here, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!
Strong as a spell, I'll never tell. Yeah, I like you, that's for sure. Never have to close the door. Been a long time.